The battlefield stretched across a scarred plain, smoldering wreckage and lifeless bodies scattered under the blood-red haze of a dying sun. General Alexander surveyed the scene from atop a ridge, his battle-worn armor reflecting the flickering fires below. His forces had claimed victory, but at a terrible cost. "General," a young lieutenant approached, his face pale with exhaustion. "We've secured the remaining enemy forces. There's one of significance among them." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Significance?" The lieutenant nodded. "The alien leader, sir. Vekal of the Drether." The name sent a ripple through the gathered officers. The Drether were humanity's fiercest enemies, a warrior race known for their brutality and resilience. Their commander, Vekal, was a legend, a ghostly figure who had never been captured until now. Vekal was bound in the holding chamber, his towering frame hunched to fit the confines of the human facility. His slate-gray skin bore the scars of countless battles, and his golden eyes glinted with defiance. General Alexander entered the chamber, his gaze meeting Vekal's without hesitation. "Vekal, I presume." The alien's deep voice rumbled. "You presume correctly, human. Are you here to gloat or to kill me?" "Neither," Alexander replied, pulling up a chair. "I want answers. Your people have attacked colonies, destroyed fleets, and slaughtered civilians. Why?" Vekal's gaze hardened. "You think this war is one-sided? Your kind invaded Drether space first. You mined our planets, poisoned our waters, and dismissed our warnings. We fight for survival." Alexander frowned. This wasn't the story he had been told. "That's not how our leaders see it." "Your leaders are liars," Vekal growled, "as are most leaders in war." The truth in the alien's words unsettled Alexander. He had always trusted the motives of humanity's war machine, but now cracks began to form in that certainty. Days turned into weeks, and Alexander found himself drawn to the holding chamber more often than he intended. Vekal, despite his captivity, spoke with a calm dignity that defied the human stereotype of Drether savagery. "You don't kill your prisoners," Vekal observed one day. "That is unusual for your kind." Alexander folded his arms. "We follow the rules of war." "Rules?" Vekal scoffed. "Rules are luxuries of the victor. Among the Drether, mercy is a test of strength, not weakness." "What kind of test?" "To see if you are strong enough to end the cycle of blood." The words lingered with Alexander long after he left the chamber. The human high command was clear. Vekal was to be executed. His death would demoralize the Drether forces and cement humanity's dominance. But Alexander hesitated. In his conversations with Vekal, the alien leader had shared accounts of Drether culture, of their reverence for honor, their deep familial bonds, and their belief in balance with their world. It was a stark contrast to the propaganda Alexander had been fed. One evening, he confided in his trusted second-in-command, Major Evelyn Tan. "You're considering sparing him," Evelyn said, her tone cautious. Alexander nodded. "He's not the monster we've been told. If what he says about the origins of this war is true, then we've been fighting a lie. And if he's lying, then he dies. But I won't execute a being who may hold the key to peace without knowing the truth." The day of Vekal's scheduled execution arrived. In the barracks, soldiers whispered about their general's rumored reluctance. Some questioned his loyalty, others admired his conviction. Alexander entered Vekal's cell one last time. "You're being transferred to a secure facility," Alexander said. Vekal's eyes narrowed. "For interrogation or execution?" "Neither," Alexander replied, unlocking the restraints. "I'm letting you go." The Drether warrior stood slowly, towering over the general. "Why?" "Because you're right. Mercy is strength. And if there's even a chance you can broker peace, it's a chance I'm willing to take." Vekal inclined his head. "Your mercy will cost you, human. Your people won't forgive this." "I don't need their forgiveness," Alexander said. "I need this war to end." Alexander and Vekal slipped through enemy lines under the cover of darkness, their destination a neutral zone where Drether and human diplomats had once met. The journey was fraught with danger, as rogue human patrols and Drether skirmishers roamed the area. During the journey, the two warriors found common ground. They shared stories of their lives before the war, Alexander as a young officer dreaming of exploration, Vekal as a father training his son in the Drether martial arts. "You remind me of him," Vekal said quietly one night. "Your son? He had your fire, your stubbornness. He was taken in the first attack on our world." Alexander lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry. Perhaps your mercy honors him," Vekal said, his voice soft. The neutral zone was desolate, its once thriving diplomatic center reduced to ruins by years of conflict. There, they met a Drether envoy, a shrewd elder named Kashek, and Alexander's trusted ally, Major Evelyn Tan. "You're a fool, Alexander," Evelyn said upon seeing him. "If command finds out, they'll strip you of everything." "Then so be it," Alexander replied. "This war has cost too much already." Kashek regarded the human general with curiosity. "You are an anomaly, Alexander. Few in your species would make such a sacrifice." "Perhaps more would if they knew the truth," Alexander said. Word of Alexander's actions reached human high command, and a strike force was dispatched to apprehend him and eliminate Vekal. Simultaneously, a faction of Drether loyalists opposed a peace move to assassinate their leader. The neutral zone became a battleground. Alexander and Vekal fought side by side, defending the fragile hope they had nurtured. Their combined strength and strategy turned the tide, but not without cost. As the dust settled, Kashek and Evelyn negotiated a ceasefire, laying the groundwork for formal peace talks. Alexander returned to human command in chains, branded a traitor by many. Yet, his actions had sparked a movement among soldiers and civilians alike. A demand for transparency, for peace. Vekal returned to his people as both hero and heretic. His message of reconciliation met with resistance, but also with hope. Though separated by distance and duty, Alexander and Vekal's bond endured. Their letters, smuggled through trusted allies, became symbols of unity for both species. The war was far from over, but its tides were shifting. And at its heart were two warriors who dared to believe in a different future. The ceasefire was a fragile thing, hanging by a thread as old wounds and fresh suspicions plagued both sides. On Earth, General Alexander's court-martial became a spectacle broadcast across every network. The charges against him were clear: treason, dereliction of duty, and aiding the enemy. Despite the gravity of the accusations, Alexander remained steadfast. "I chose mercy," he told the tribunal, "not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. We've been fighting a war built on lies, and if humanity has any honor left, we'll face the truth." The response was mixed. Protesters rallied outside the court demanding his release, holding signs that read, "Mercy is strength," and "End the war." Others decried him as a traitor, demanding swift punishment. In Drether territory, Vekal faced his own struggles. The Council of Elders, divided over his actions, debated whether he should retain his position as a leader or be cast out as a traitor to their cause. "You gambled with our survival," one elder accused during a heated session. "I gambled to ensure it," Vekal countered, his voice steady. "The path of war has brought us nothing but ruin. Do you not see that?" While Alexander awaited sentencing, an unexpected ally intervened: Evelyn Tan. Her quiet defiance of the High Command's decisions had gone unnoticed, but now she used her influence to rally others within the military. "We follow Alexander because he leads with honor," she argued to a gathering of sympathetic officers. "If you brand him a traitor, then you condemn the values we claim to fight for." Her efforts bore fruit. Several key military leaders began questioning the official narrative, demanding an independent review of the war's origins. In Drether space, Kashek worked to unite moderates who believed in Vekal's vision. Through secret meetings and carefully orchestrated messages, the elder began sowing the seeds of change within their society. Both Alexander and Vekal became targets for extremists who sought to rekindle the flames of war. On Earth, a bomb detonated outside the tribunal during Alexander's sentencing, killing several civilians and injuring dozens. The attack, claimed by a radical pro-war faction, sent shockwaves through the human government. In Drether territory, Vekal narrowly survived an ambush by rogue warriors who viewed peace as weakness. Though he emerged unscathed, the attack left him shaken. "These factions won't stop," Vekal said in a private meeting with Kashek. They thrive on fear and chaos. If we can't find a way to unite our people, they'll drag us back into the abyss. Evelyn's investigations unearthed a critical piece of evidence, an ancient Drether artifact stored in a secret facility on a remote moon. The artifact, a crystalline device known as the Kirith Stone, contained records of the Drethers' first contact with humanity, records that contradicted the official narrative on both sides. Alexander, now under house arrest after the attack on the tribunal, received the information through a clandestine channel. This stone could end the war, Evelyn told him during a secure transmission. If the truth gets out, it will force both governments to reconsider their positions. And if it falls into the wrong hands? Alexander asked. Then it will spark the very war we're trying to end. Alexander and Vekal coordinated a secret mission to retrieve the Kirith Stone. Evelyn assembled a team of loyal soldiers, while Vekal recruited Drether allies willing to risk everything for peace. The moon was a barren wasteland, its surface scarred by centuries of conflict. The facility housing the stone was heavily guarded, a joint effort by human and Drether hardliners determined to keep its secrets buried. The mission required precision and trust. Alexander and Vekal, fighting side by side once more, led their respective teams through treacherous terrain and enemy patrols. "We'll have one chance at this," Alexander said as they approached the facility. "No mistakes." "Then let's make history," Vekal replied. The mission was a success, though not without cost. Several members of their team sacrificed their lives to secure the Kirith Stone. When the crystalline device was finally activated, its recordings revealed a startling truth. Humanity's expansion into Drether space had been unintentional, a result of corrupted navigation data during a long-forgotten colonization mission. The Drethers' initial attacks were defensive, born of desperation as they perceived humans as invaders. Subsequent retaliations from both sides escalated the conflict into an all-out war. This changes everything," Alexander said as he stared at the holographic projection. "Or nothing," Vekal said grimly. "There are those who will ignore the truth if it doesn't suit their purpose." Using a secure network, Alexander and Vekal released the Kirith Stone's recordings to both species. The revelations sparked a firestorm of debate. On Earth, citizens demanded accountability from their leaders. In Drether territory, protests erupted against the hardliners who had perpetuated the war. But the recordings also inspired hope. Across both civilizations, voices rose in favor of peace, calling for an end to the cycle of violence. As support for peace grew, the hardliners on both sides launched a desperate last stand. They formed an alliance, pooling their remaining forces to attack a key Drether human trade route, hoping to reignite hostilities. Alexander and Vekal, now recognized as symbols of unity, led a joint fleet to intercept them. The battle was fierce, a testament to the hardliners' determination. But Alexander and Vekal's forces prevailed, their unity proving stronger than the divisions of the past. In the aftermath of the battle, the human and Drether governments signed the Concord of Kirith, a formal treaty establishing peace and cooperation. Alexander and Vekal, hailed as heroes, were invited to speak at the signing ceremony. "Today, we honor the lives lost to this war," Alexander said, his voice steady. "And we vow to ensure their sacrifices were not in vain." Vekal added, "May this treaty serve as a beacon, reminding us that understanding is the strongest weapon we possess." Epilogue: The Path Forward. Years later, Alexander and Vekal stood together on a newly terraformed colony, a joint venture between humans and Drether. Children of both species played together under a sky filled with stars. "We've come a long way," Alexander said, his voice tinged with pride. "And we still have far to go," Vekal replied. The future remained uncertain, but as the two leaders gazed at the horizon, they knew one thing. They had changed the course of history, proving that even in the darkest of times, mercy and understanding could pave the way for peace. Even as the Concord of Kirith brought newfound hope, the embers of resistance smoldered in the shadows. Not everyone welcomed peace. Rogue factions of humans and Drether, embittered by years of loss, saw the treaty as a betrayal. They formed underground cells, united by their hatred of the other species and their refusal to accept unity. One of the most dangerous leaders to emerge was Kale Drenner, a charismatic human officer disillusioned by the treaty. Known for his tactical brilliance, Drenner viewed the Concord as a surrender of humanity's rightful dominion over the stars. His Drether counterpart was a former military strategist named Zev Kor, who blamed the treaty for weakening Drether honor and sovereignty. Together, Drenner and Zev Kor forged a coalition called the Burning Veil, dedicated to sabotaging the fragile peace. Their first act of defiance was an audacious strike on the orbital station Miraxis 7, a joint human-Drether venture. The attack left dozens dead and sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Alexander and Vekal, now serving as liaisons between their peoples, were called to an emergency meeting aboard the United Coalition flagship. The room was tense, filled with high-ranking officers and diplomats, many of whom had been reluctant supporters of the treaty. "This attack threatens everything we've worked for," said Admiral Reyes, a human officer with a fiery temper. "If we don't respond decisively, the Burning Veil will gain more followers. What you propose, an all-out assault on suspected cells, will only fuel their narrative," Vekal countered. "We must approach this with precision, not brutality. And if we hesitate, how many more will die?" Admiral Reyes snapped. Alexander stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. "We're not here to argue. We're here to protect the peace. Vekal is right. If we act without understanding, we'll turn these terrorists into martyrs." After hours of debate, a compromise was reached. Alexander and Vekal would lead a joint task force to investigate and dismantle the Burning Veil. The task force's first mission brought them to a lawless fringe world called Zorith Prime. Known for its black markets and hidden strongholds, Zorith Prime was a haven for smugglers and dissidents. Alexander and Vekal, accompanied by Evelyn Tan and a Drether commando named Arwyke Tan, infiltrated the planet's underbelly. The tension between the team members was palpable, with years of distrust between humans and Drether still lingering. In the neon-lit corridors of a bustling trade hub, they followed leads that eventually brought them to an underground meeting of Burning Veil operatives. Disguised and blending into the crowd, Alexander and Vekal listened as a speaker riled up the audience. "Peace is a lie," the speaker shouted. "They want to erase our identities, our history. We will not let them." The crowd erupted in cheers, but before the operatives could disperse, the team moved in. A chaotic firefight ensued, with Alexander and Vekal fighting back-to-back as they captured several key figures. Interrogations of the captured operatives revealed disturbing truths. Many of them were ordinary citizens, disillusioned by economic hardships and lingering prejudices. The Burning Veil exploited their anger, turning them into pawns in a larger game. "It's not just extremists," Vekal said during a debriefing. "This movement is rooted in the fears and grievances of our people. If we don't address those, the Burning Veil will only grow stronger." Alexander nodded. "We need to win hearts, not just battles." Their words fell on deaf ears among some leaders, who pushed for harsher measures. But Alexander and Vekal began working on a parallel strategy, reaching out to communities on the fringes, addressing their concerns, and countering the Burning Veil's propaganda with truth. As the task force dismantled one cell after another, they uncovered evidence of moles within both the human and Drether governments. These insiders fed the Burning Veil critical intelligence, sabotaging peacekeeping efforts. The betrayal hit close to home when Evelyn Tan discovered that one of her most trusted officers, Lieutenant Merrick, had been secretly working with Kale Drenner. "You don't understand, Major," Merrick said when confronted. "This peace isn't real. It's a facade. They'll betray us the moment it's convenient." Evelyn's voice was cold. "The only betrayal here is yours." Despite her anger, she allowed Merrick to be taken into custody instead of executing him. The decision, though principled, left her shaken. Months of investigation culminated in the discovery of the Burning Veil's central base, a hidden facility on a desolate moon near Drether space. The base was a fortress, protected by advanced technology and a small fleet of stolen ships. "This is it," Alexander said as the task force prepared for the assault. "If we take this base, we can end their campaign." "But at what cost?" Vekal asked. "If we make this a slaughter, we risk proving their point." The two leaders devised a plan that prioritized capturing key figures and disabling the base's operations without unnecessary bloodshed. The assault was brutal, with the task force facing heavy resistance. In the chaos, Alexander and Vekal confronted Drenner and Zevkor in the base's command center. "You're fools," Drenner sneered as he aimed his weapon at Alexander. "This treaty won't last. Peace is a lie." "It's only a lie if we give up on it," Alexander replied, his voice steady. Zevkor lunged at Vekal, their blades clashing in a furious duel. The Drether warlord fought with ferocity, but Vekal's determination and skill ultimately prevailed. "You've forgotten what it means to be Drether," Vekal said as he disarmed Zevkor. "Honor is not found in endless war." With Drenner and Zevkor subdued, the task force secured the base. The Burning Veil's defeat marked a turning point, but it was far from the end. Alexander and Vekal knew that the underlying tensions fueling such movements still needed to be addressed. "We've won a battle," Alexander said during a broadcast to both species. "But the war for peace continues. It's a fight that requires all of us." Vekal stood beside him, adding, "Together, we must build a future where fear and hatred no longer hold sway." Epilogue. The journey continues. As Alexander and Vekal parted ways to continue their respective roles in building peace, they exchanged a solemn vow to remain allies and friends. The road ahead was long, fraught with challenges and uncertainty, but they faced it with resolve. For the first time in generations, there was hope, not just for an end to war, but for a galaxy united in understanding and mutual respect. Years passed, and the scars of war began to heal. The fragile peace forged by Alexander and Vekal endured, though not without effort. Joint human-Drether projects flourished, from trade agreements to scientific collaborations. On the terraformed world of Kirith, a planet symbolizing their shared history, humans and Drether lived and worked side by side. But the work of reconciliation was slow and uneven. Alexander and Vekal remained at the forefront, mediating disputes, addressing dissent, and rebuilding trust. Their partnership became legendary, a beacon of what could be achieved when understanding triumphed over fear. As the years wore on, Alexander's age began to catch up with him. Though his mind remained sharp, his body grew frail. One evening, on the anniversary of the Concord of Kirith, he summoned Vekal to his home on the colony. "I'm not as strong as I used to be," Alexander said with a wry smile as he sipped tea on the veranda. The two sat together, watching the twin suns set over the horizon. Vekal inclined his head. "Strength is not only of the body, my friend. Yours has always been of the spirit." "I've done what I could," Alexander said, his voice softer now. "But the galaxy still has a long way to go. Promise me you'll continue the fight." "You have my word," Vekal said solemnly. In the days that followed, Alexander passed peacefully, surrounded by his family and closest friends. His funeral was attended by dignitaries from both species, a testament to the unity he had helped build. With Alexander gone, Vekal assumed the mantle of leadership for the Joint Peace Initiative. Though the loss of his friend weighed heavily on him, it strengthened his resolve. He visited Earth for the first time, walking among humans who greeted him not as an enemy but as an ally. He returned to Drether strongholds, speaking to warriors who once scorned him, showing them that peace was not weakness. Through his efforts, the treaty evolved into something greater, the Galactic Accord, a pact that extended beyond humanity and the Drether, welcoming other species to join the alliance. On Kirith, a monument was erected in the capital city. It depicted two figures, Alexander and Vekal, standing side by side, their hands outstretched in a gesture of unity. Beneath it, an inscription read, "In the darkest of times, they chose the light. May their courage guide us forever." As Vekal stood before the monument on the anniversary of the Galactic Accord, a young human approached him, a cadet in the new interspecies peacekeeping force. "Sir," the cadet said, his voice full of awe, "do you think we'll ever stop fighting?" Vekal's golden eyes reflected the light of the setting sun as he replied, "Conflict is part of who we are. But so is the capacity for understanding. As long as we remember that, there will always be hope." The cadet saluted, and Vekal nodded before turning to leave. Epilogue. A galaxy united. The galaxy continued to change, shaped by the foundations laid by two warriors who dared to defy the tide of hatred. Though challenges remained, humanity, and the Drether stood as symbols of what could be achieved through mutual respect and shared purpose. And as the stars shimmered above the monument on Kirith, the legacy of Alexander and Vekel burned brightly, a reminder that even the smallest act of mercy could reshape the fate of worlds.